hello, and welcome to Sonic Talk Live, number 439, recording today, Wednesday, the 2nd of March. It's a leap year this year, isn't it? So I think everybody got a bit thrown out by the fact there was a 29th of February this year, which is unusual. In fact, I'm sure I saw someone on Facebook had, in fact, Lee Groves, a brilliant programmer, worked a lot with Spike Stent, said that it was he got married on the 28th of February, so it's only his second anniversary, but obviously he's been around for 4 years. Anyway, that's all completely random. I want to say hello and welcome. This is the podcast that talks about music technology, news of the week, other kind of issues surrounding music technology and that kind of stuff. If you're not sure what this is all about, subscribe and you can see what other stuff we do. We've just published a review of the Korg Mini Log, and there's lots and lots of other good stuff coming along if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're an MP3 listener, subscribe on iTunes, I think it is, and you'll be able to get this every week, as is your want. I want to say thank you also to our show sponsor, UVI. This is the Falcon, the Creative Hybrid Instrument. It's a massive, massive instrument. Do check it out. You go to uvi.net/Falcon. And see for yourself. Really quite amazing instrument. Anyway, welcome to our guests. Oh, and also we'll say hello to the chat room. We managed to get you all going. Thank you for joining us. A nice, fulsome chat room, as I like to say every week, because I think there would be people disappointed if I didn't use that exact phrase. So it's one of my little habits. So that little chuckle there was Mr. Gaz Williams, who's there in his newly reorganised. Well, I saw it last night. I came over last night because I was in Bristol, and I saw your very impressive setup. Gaz Williams, of course, bass player, producer, doing a lot of interesting stuff with tempo mapping and production and all those kind of things. How are you, Gaz?
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much. Having lots of fun with that new Melodyne 4. Which is another game changer, I think, the Melodyne have created with that incredible piece of software. I mean, the sound. So in the past, Melodyne was great for all the kind of pitch stuff, and that's how it made its name. But the sound editor now in Melodyne 4, this is like having not just EQ, but being able to go to adjust the harmonics.
Yeah, I did hear some impressive examples that you played last night, so I'm hoping that we can persuade you to do a little piece on that, because it's a really interesting new way of working.
It's a new way of working.
Spectral EQ, if you like. Yeah.
Because the Melodyne knows what the spectral qualities of each and every note. So if you say, like, let's just increase the fundamental pitch, it'll increase the, by say 3 decibels, then every single note's fundamental frequency.
Yeah, not just it's like a super dynamic EQ, but with spectral analysis. Yeah,
it's different. It's like a new level, isn't it? I think it's major. It's a biggie.
Anyway, welcome, Gaz. Nice to have you aboard. And, of course, Mr. Richard Hilton from over there in the US of A, where he mans the controls in Noel Rogers' studio on various highfalutin projects. Also plays live with Chic on a regular basis. In fact, joined us last week from early doors in his hotel room in Maui. If you did make it to the end of the show, you would have caught Richard's little... what would I call that? Appearance. That's what I was trying to say. How are you, Rich?
I'm good, thank you.
I am glad to hear that.
It was like a cameo appearance in the movies.
Cameo. Yeah. It was nice to see you. You do seem less tired than perhaps you did at 7 o'clock in the morning after a long jet laggy kind of fright.
Well, I feel good. And felt good that day, too. I just was embarrassed because I had forgotten. I'd misjudged the time difference.
Well, that's quite all right by me. You're more than, we're always happy to have you aboard. And considering what you were up to that weekend, great. So I'm guessing you're all back. And how was your trip back? Because you were talking it was going to be some kind of god-awful layover and, really long...
We managed to beat the layover by getting on an earlier flight. So in the layover period. So it was just fine.
It was better than you expected.
The flights home were just fine. It's just a long way from Hawaii to where we have to go. So,
the vagaries of international touring and one-off gigs in different continents and on different oceans. Amazing, really.
Well, this wasn't the one-off. This was the 4th gig in of a run where we did 3 hard ticket gigs on the west coast of the United States before running off to Hawaii to play this corporate thing.
Ah, okay. So you're on the roll. You're in the zone, as it were, but just not that time zone.
Right. Well, it was gradual, though. So we had, we went halfway there and then got used to that time zone and then went the rest of the way there. It wasn't too bad.
There you go. That's all right. A gradual thing. Right, we've got a few things in this week. We've got a small panel, but we've got some interesting things to talk about, and it means that everybody gets more of a chance to air their views. Sometimes it's nice to break it down to a small elite team, the special force. Anyway, what do you think of this? I got lost in the music there. That's the Mersenne, I think it's called, which is a kind of rhythmic percussion synthesizer. And we don't normally do lots of iOS stuff on this, but it just struck me as a really musical and interesting synthesizer that made me think those are the kind of sounds I want. Unfortunately, I haven't got an iPad that will run that. Gaz, however, seems to be holding up one with a copy of the very same upon it.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, £2.99 or something?
Crikey.
This is a terrific app. It sounds beautiful. It's one of these apps where virtually everything you do on it sounds useful and good. I mean, I guess it's because it's got a very specific focus. I think that's a really cool idea. It straight away, it's got a personality and an identity. So,
and helped by brilliant, not brilliant, it depends on your musical taste, but a very nice musical demo, which is so often missing from any of these things.
Yeah, good point. But as I say, when you play around with it, it really does sound very nice. It's sort of it is difficult to get an unpleasant sound out of it. The arpeggiator and that side of things, it's very simple. Well, I say it's simple. Well, you can do a lot with it, but it's really nice and straightforward to use. I'm super impressed with this one. I think, again, when you're talking about £2.99, it's like a laughable amount of money, really, isn't it?
I don't know why these people aren't charging more in many ways. I mean, there is another app we're going to talk about later where they are, but it's surprising that people think. I guess it's the tyranny of availability and the precedence that's been set means that sort of tends to happen. I did want to ask you, as you've got it, have been playing with it, what is it that makes it so much more of a percussive synthesizer than just a regular synthesizer?
I think, well, certainly the controls, with controls like hardness, but two oscillators and a noise module. I think it's going into some sort of envelope shaper or something. It's called the sustain mode, where you can play with, it's got a color control and it's got this hardness control.
Oh, right. Okay. So that I mean, it does sound like things with front end rather than floaty pads. I guess also that must make it in some way easier, because you don't have. What's the polyphony on it? Do you know?
Don't know. I mean, I literally downloaded it.
Okay, fair enough.
About half an hour ago.
Okay, you haven't finished your review yet. Well, that's fair enough.
I don't know. But what I was going to say,
I was
just going to say, just in terms of the signal path, and crucially, it flows into a resonator. Then you see, and that's the thing which.
That'll do it. So you have it sort of impulses. I know, Rich. What do you think? It sounded kind of impressive. I mean, because we've had such in many ways, we've had an embarrassment of riches with new instruments that aren't doing anything particularly new around the play. Using just a similar, the good old familiar subtractive synthesis or whatever. This seemed to have a little bit of something that just charisma about it. Have you had a chance to check the video? It sounded nice, didn't it?
I did. I watched the video and listened to it. It sounded fantastic. I unfortunately didn't get the time to download it and play with it myself. But yeah, unusual sounds. I guess it's an FM engine, basically. Is that right? I saw a graphic somewhere towards the end of that video that led me to believe it was. It flashed quickly, but it looked like FM to me.
Let's have a look. Basically, what we got? We got high quality audio, 32-bit, clean, blah blah blah, blah, unlimited number of channels, metronome, built-in signal processing, filters and EQ, dynamic stereo panning, mid-side balance.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. There's and this is Kymatica. I mean, the guy from Kymatica is no, that's not Kymatica. What am I talking about? It's the wrong thing, isn't it? That's completely the wrong thing. Oops. Spoiler alert. Let me just see.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Let me just find that. So this is Mersenne. I thought that was the page I had set up. So that just uncovers my embarrassment.
Ice gear instrument.
Ice gear. That's it. Gotcha. I was just seeing if I could find those bullet points, and then unfortunately showed the other ones. Mersenne. This is
nice. Oh, the interface is very nice, actually. It's very easy to learn. You know, I mean, I've only just got it, but you can get around it very quickly. It's got a nice readability to it. And it's clear. It's lovely, actually. It's a very nice interface.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. Anyway, I mean, it's always. And I guess because we've got another iPad thing we're going to talk about, but maybe that'll bring up a wider discussion because it feels like we're transitioning into this area where things are becoming potentially more integrated for a number of reasons. Anyway, I suppose that might be that particular topic done because things I don't know anything about it, and I'm sure that I don't want to uncover my embarrassment. I just wanted to see what you thought, but I think the thing is about it. I guess the thing that really struck me about this more than anything else was what a difference a great music demo makes to the perception of an instrument. Something that has some sort of identity as a music, because after all, these things are musical for creating music. So when you hear stuff that's maybe the thing that you would expect, or just the norm, it's nice to hear something a little bit different, and that really does go a long way into making you want to buy something. And I think that's something that perhaps could be picked up by a lot of people, although it's not all that easy. I mean, I'm to create beautiful music, because it's such a subjective thing, isn't it? It depends on the ear of the listener.
I would say that the quality of those musical presentations to demonstrate new software technologies and new instruments has gone up, quite honestly. I find that there's quite a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
And these days. And not too many, like, kind of cheesy ones.
I suppose so. I think it makes it important. I guess I'm coming at it more from perhaps the point of view of seeing these things demonstrated at trade shows, where you do get a different thing, because obviously it has to be done in the moment, and it's not necessarily something that somebody actually has to be talented enough to play something compelling, rather than the usual noodling, which I'm totally guilty of as well, I'm sure. So yes, I suppose so.
It's an art,
definitely,
unto itself,
and a skill.
Yeah.
Okay, right. What's the other bit of news? Oh, that's right. Brian Eno. He's got a new album coming out. The Ship, it's called, which interestingly is available later in the month. It's not. He hasn't actually got any kind of preview of it, which is kind of interesting. An interesting approach. You can pre-order it. It's got 4 tracks. The first one is 20 minutes long, and it's got the usual Eno kind of description of how he's approached it and stuff. It's quite interesting. I mean, there aren't very many kind of heavyweight solo electronic musicians who are releasing stuff, that we got to look forward to this day, and it's kind of good. I mean, and I guess listening back to, particularly with the passing of Bowie and the revisiting of the influence he's had on a lot of these major artists and his electronic works, it's something to look forward to. This.
Well, I haven't heard an Eno album in many years.
But there's some classic. I mean, Another Green World and all of those that music for airports and stuff. I don't know, Gaz, what do you think? Will you be pre-ordering?
Oh yeah, my friend has actually got a production credit on this album, so he's absolutely he's chuffed with it. Mr. Peter Chilvers, yes. He Yeah. So he's been involved with that. I haven't actually heard this one yet, but there is singing on it, isn't there? So, but I think I can talk about a little Eno story from a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
Which I was duped. I was duped into a bass session for him at his studio a couple of years back. Duped because I was actually delivering a bass guitar to somebody else, and who happened to be at the studio. So I got the address, turned up with this bass guitar, and brought it in. Said friend said, "Oh, guys, could you just plug it into the monitors and play it so I can hear what it sounds like?" I did. Sure. Started playing. They put the track in to record, and I was doing a session.
Wow.
And knowing I was, so without even hearing the song, without even knowing, they duped me. So to get me approaching it without
any preconceptions
whatsoever. And what made it even harder was there was already not just one bass line, but two simultaneous bass lines in two different keys going on at the same time. So I'm having to think, right, where am I going to fit in with this?
Wow.
So, but then, I ended up doing a bunch of takes on it, and Brian toddled off after a while and went off to do something else, and they'd always stop the track at a particular point, but this one time they let the track play through, and there was these piano chords at the end of the track, and I think it was largely improvised, but I managed to land every one with a really nice harmonizing or support. I got it all, everyone. Anyway, Brian came back in and started listening and comping the takes, and he works very, very fast. So he has this engineer who's kind of doing the computer thing, and they'll listen to a take and just wipe loads of it, just grab, and then just literally just grab anything good and just delete everything else. There's just really,
that's got to be how's that as an experience for morale building if you're in the room at the same time?
But it's going through it, and he was like picking out all the bits that I definitely wouldn't, and the nice bits, well, they were just going. I was like, oh, but anyway, it got to the end bit, and I was thinking, wait for this now, He just felt like, oh no, just took all of that. So but still, what a thrill, hey? Do you know what I mean? What an unexpected thrill, and brilliant.
Did any of it end up in the final thing? Did you get anything, any notes on there?
I'm not sure, actually. I can't remember, actually, because there was a whole bunch of stuff I was doing then, so I'm not sure with that thing, but maybe I should look into that, shouldn't I? Well,
maybe so. Well, anyway, his album is due out, like I say, April. It's on Warp, the ship, and it's been getting quite a lot of press, so I'll be very interested to hear that. I mean, I like a lot of his sensibilities about it. But there was a couple of things I wanted to quickly mention, actually. Two things. First thing was Iris 2 won a Tech Award at the recent NAMM Tech Awards. And also, Ennio Morricone got an Oscar finally for his music on the Hateful Eight. I mean, there was a headline, actually. I think it was on the Independent. I don't know if I've got it here, actually, the link, but he scored over 500 movies, and this is the first time I think he's been nominated a few times. It's the first Oscar he's won, which is kind of amazing. I know, Rich, that's kind of a nice feel-good thing. I don't know how old Ennio is. He must be getting on a bit, so it was running out of time to get that award.
Yes, congratulations.
Have you ever had any dealings with the great man?
I've never met Brian Eno.
Or Ennio Morricone?
No, I haven't met him either, actually. Much as I would love to meet him, I haven't.
He's supposed to be a very interesting character.
There's some part of me that sees Eno as being like Chauncey Gardner, if you're familiar with the movie Being There.
No, I don't know that.
That's all, yes. And that's all I've got to say about him. I used to be very interested in his music in the 70s, and some of the songs I really like, and I thought it was really cool that he would just kind of like mumble phonetically into a microphone and then write words based on the mumbles that may have absolutely no meaning whatsoever. And that's why That's how you get songs like "I'll Come Running to Tie Your Shoes" and "Baby's on Fire" and stuff like that. I used to love that stuff when I was younger.
Is that the kind of cut-up approach to vocals? Which actually was interesting, because I always thought that Bowie had been attributed with this kind of cut-up approach to lyrics, but I think it must have been Eno rather than Bowie, because Bowie's much more studied and much more kind of, as far as I understand, his approach to lyrics is much more kind of traditionally literary, or maybe I was wrong.
I think he took that from William Burroughs jumping in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The cutting and tossing it in the air and picking it up in whatever order. I mean, the Beatles even claimed to do that with the middle section of "For the Benefit of Mr. Kite." Have a sort of Burroughs-like approach with these tape pieces where they just basically, rather than words, threw them in the air, picked them up, assembled them in whatever order without listening, and then ran it as a loop.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, all of these approaches definitely have validity if you can apply the discipline, I suppose.
In the case of Eno, he would just kind of mumble over the top of the track and then listen to his mumbles and try to extract words that may or may not tell a particular narrative, but sound cool.
Gotcha.
And that was something about the way he used to write vocals. But I haven't heard anything new from Eno in decades, literally decades. I don't know that much about what he's been doing for the last couple of decades. And I know about certain projects like the music for whatever's projects, like the music for airports, music for gardening, music for whatever.
It sounds a bit mysterious. It's a bit like those just getting close to those titles of CDs you see in gardening centres, which just kind of when you press. Yeah. This one's relaxing. This one is a seascape. This one is music. Yeah, want to watch out with that.
Well, it's funny. Mm-hmm. I always have to bring my own music to the massage therapist, because that supposedly relaxing stuff starts to drive me nuts after a while.
Excellent. While we remember, we did mention briefly about the Sonicstate Live gig in Bristol on the 26th of March at Salt Cafe. Tickets are now sold out. Sold out! And capacity is limited. So if you were thinking of coming down and just getting in on the door, it's probably not going to work out. And I would hate to be the one to have to turn you away, but because it is a limited capacity. But things are moving on apace. We're getting quite excited about it. So hooray all round.
Hooray!
Okay, I think we'll do our ad at this point. Seems like a good position to come in, because we've got a obviously word from our sponsors. We're talking that's the picture I want. We're talking Isotope and Ozone 7.
Produce rich, full, professional sounding tracks with the critically acclaimed mastering tools in Ozone and Ozone Advanced. Now, the latest Isotope innovations in Ozone 7 bring modern and vintage processing to the forefront of the music production experience. Updated for Ozone 7, Ozone's highly regarded maximizer features a brand new frequency-specific IRC4 algorithm that delivers transparent mixes with less pumping and distortion. Use it to smooth out an unwieldy mix, or tame the kick drum peaks without affecting the vocals. The dynamic EQ, now in both the advanced and standard versions of Ozone, lives and breathes with your audio, giving you more effective control over your sound without coloring your entire mix. Harness the precision of an equalizer and the musical ballistics of a compressor in one integrated processor. New for Ozone 7, vintage-inspired processing puts nostalgic tone at your fingertips to bring the creative color and character of analog hardware to your digital recordings. Glue your mix together and bring a natural feel to harsh-sounding recordings with the Vintage Limiter. Vintage tape adds the dimension, warmth, and depth of tape saturation to your masters for a timeless sound that suits your creative vision. Brighten your mix, smooth out heavy low end, and add body with the Pultec modeled Vintage EQ.
Right, that's enough for anyone's money. I want to say thank you very much to iZotope for sponsoring the show. Of course, we do have their weekly competition, and we had a winner from last week. Last week, we asked you to tweet the hashtag, what was it? It was Just Sounds Better and Ozone 7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. And we have a winner in the form of somebody called Rod Castro, who goes by the Twitter handle of @QuadRod, which is QUADROD. So if you want to get in touch @QuadRod, we will be able to deposit via the iZotope Ferry a copy of Ozone 7 into your account. So thank you very much for entering. And of course, wouldn't be the same without another competition this week, and iZotope are of course giving away another copy of Ozone 7 this week. We're asking you to tweet the hashtag, right, this is a bit of a mouthful, Essential Audio Tools, that's all one word, Essential Audio Tools, and the hashtag Ozone 7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. And please do put some comments in there. In fact, when we had iZotope down, they told us that they've had all around the office, in the cafe area and the seating area, they've got these big screens which basically just send up random social media stuff. So if you write a message in there, it might well be seen by someone at iZotope having lunch or having a coffee at a certain break, because it all just kind of scrolls through. And they said it's really good because it gives them immediate feedback, and it's always, I suppose it also means that they get to see just how brilliant you lot are at entering competitions and spreading the word. So once again, we thank iZotope for their sponsorship of the show. It's been great having them on so far, and we hope it may continue for much longer. Right, so the next thing that was kind of interesting, there's a couple of things here. I saw this came up. This was the MIDI thing, which is a kind of Bluetooth MIDI adapter which you plug in and out of the port. It's running on Kickstart, which is an interesting, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. Then I remembered also there was a similar thing from Yamaha, which is the Bluetooth transmitter, and then it's like a loop back cable that you plug in that gives you essentially Bluetooth access to MIDI hardware, so you can then access it via iOS and OS X. I don't know whether that works on the PC or not, but this could be kind of interesting. What do you think, Gaz? I mean, I did hear, and this is some, obviously you might want more than one, and apparently it is possible to have more, up to 7 Bluetooth devices attached to to iOS or OS X, and I didn't know this. Were you aware?
No, I'm not sure really, because it's all very new, isn't it, for it to be sort of embedded as a operating system level, but we're seeing a lot of this Bluetooth MIDI now in lots of devices. It's almost becoming a standard, and it certainly will be a standard before long. Virtually every piece of musical equipment will probably have it, or will be marked down for not having it. I think it'll be.
All right, you embedded, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's only we're very close to that point in time, I'm sure, especially with the standardization of things. Does Windows 10, with all of its inbuilt MIDI, does that support MIDI?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not so sure about that. Windows 10, let me have a look. Windows, no, it's not. Windows 10.
One for Pete Brown.
Bluetooth MIDI. Let's have a look. I'll just have a quick look.
Because that chord bot that we were looking at, that's on Kickstarter as well, the really cool looking chord sequencer thing, that had Bluetooth MIDI in it, as so that made me think at the time, wow, we're going to see this on a regular basis. Which is a great thing. I mean, of course.
I'm not sure. I think that Windows 10 does have RTP MIDI access, I think, which is the network protocol rather than the Bluetooth, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know, Rich, I wonder do you think this would ever be robust enough for kind of live? I mean, it gets a bit scary when you're transmitting things through the air in large RF interfered sort of spaces.
That's a good question, among many good questions that I have. The funny thing is, I've been wanting one of these things for years, because I have a particularly finicky MIDI run at the studio over at Niles, and it tends to have to go through the whole perimeter of the room to get from where it's beginning to where it needs to end up. And for the longest time, I was looking and looking and looking for a decent wireless MIDI solution, and I finally ran new cable last week, got it all working, or 2 weeks ago, and now here it is. 2 different MIDI solutions in the same podcast, and I don't need them anymore. But I do have the following question. Does a class-compliant device that is sending MIDI via one of these things show up in Apple's audio MIDI setup as a class-compliant device?
That's a good question.
With all of its features, with all of everything that it would normally send down a wire available to you? That's really what I want to know.
I don't know.
And then again, how it feels. So. I have a tough time with Bluetooth in that room too for some reason, just because I guess, I don't know, it's in a closet, the computer. But even if I try to use a Bluetooth keyboard in that room, it's kind of finicky. So
yeah.
I'm sure these are wonderful things. And like I said, I've been praying for them for years, and I'm thrilled to find them now that I don't need them anymore. But it's weird to me that I just would like to know the ins and outs of things like class compliance. And there's something really wonderful about plugging a device in and have your computer recognize it immediately with no drivers, nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that the other thing that you could use is MIDI over network and have something enabled at the other end, which would like the iConnectivity 2 Plus or something like that, which gives you no, that doesn't. It would be the 4. I'm sure. I think Bohm's MIDI translator, which is the Bohm box, which is coming out or is out now. You can plug an Ethernet cable in and have it relay to actual physical MIDI ports. So you could run a very long cable length and then have that show up as the network MIDI. And that shows up in OS X as a port. As soon as you create a session, it's there in pretty much, well, it's certainly in Logic. I would imagine it would be in most other OS X-based DAWs. Gaz, you look like you're itching to come in there.
No, I wasn't actually.
Just adjusting yourself.
Just itching. No, carry on.
Well, so I think they're about 30-40 quid. They're not terribly expensive, and I think the other one that we looked at was the as I say, the MIDI thing, which seems like it might, I don't know what this has that is any better than what Yamaha have already released, and the Kickstarter campaign does seem rather underfunded, so I'm guessing maybe people are thinking the same thing. But if you want to check it out, you can find it on Kickstarter. I'll put the links in the show notes, and it may be just the thing for you when they finish making it. Okay, let's see what's next. This was another cool. This was the high-speed audio board, which is what I'm trying to look at here. Now, this is called the, I'll play a little bit of this. This is based on a Beagle board, which is kind of like... Oops. Supposed to plug in. Excuse me. Doesn't seem to want to. Okay, brilliant.
24,000 pounds?
Hold on a minute. My audio routing has gone all a bit skewy. Oh, that's annoying.
No idea.
Pass. I'll explain. So the idea of this is based on a Beagle board, which is kind of like a super duper Raspberry Pi, and this thing is absolutely nailed for real-time processing, like 1 millisecond processing to event to audio output, which is really damn fast. And it's got 16 audio I/O on analog and 16 on digital as well, so you can really kind of fire it up, and you program it. Obviously it requires a programming interface, and then you can write it to the ROM, and then it will be what it needs to be. And it just struck me as a very interesting new development. And obviously I guess what they're looking for really here is to create something that will make people adopt it. I mean, I guess if you've got a decent SDK for this and you could persuade various people to use that rather than writing custom hardware, I mean, that gives you a lot of grunt and I/O. I mean, and as it seems to be supported by the fact that they were looking for $5,000 and they've got 25 grand. This is pounds, so it's a lot of money, and they've still got 30 days to go. So it looks like there are quite a lot of people who are interested in this stuff. And I'm just trying to think here. There's 50 backers. I think it's only what do they get? $99. I mean, there's some big rewards here. It just strikes me as another interface, because I mean, up to now, most of this stuff has been handled by very specific DSP chips. Like you got the Sharks, and then it used to be, I can't remember, the Motorola's that used to be in the Pro Tool stuff. So, there are these competing hardware platforms, but then you need to write, a big bit of hardware around it to have the interfacing, and it could be a pretty cool new system, assuming there's somebody else perhaps who's going to write the front end for it, and it doesn't have to be done in-house, like because as we know, not many of us has got time to experiment with coding. I think they're pushing it at installations and things like that. But I could imagine, if somebody sold you a package, you go, just squirt this into it, it becomes a 16IO mixing desk or whatever it may be. It looks pretty interesting. And it's, what was it? It's 50, 60 quid. It's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? We've been seeing these things over the last few years just getting more and more functionality, and to the point now where something like this has got huge potential, hasn't it? I mean, I love the idea of them being embedded into new instruments, really. People making kind of durable synthesizers, samplers, or whatever, and having something. I think it's really interesting because it's got that focused design idea, which is that's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, but you're right though. It's what is it? What is the? I didn't look at this. I'm sorry, Nick. What is it? Is it running like a Linux?
It is. You can drop in pure data patches, which are quite a lot of things which are available there. I did have a go at trying to run pure data on a Raspberry Pi, but I could just never quite get it working. But there are, so there are things that are kind of pre-compiled that you could drop in there, or you could write it, from the nuts and bolts if you've got the time. But it's the sort of thing that, you might be able to find, well, if this hardware would do the job and you can find somewhere who could write you something, who might, be able to do it quite quickly, you might end up with something very bespoke that suits your needs quite quickly and quite cheaply, I suppose.
It seems to me that granular synthesizers, this like the Bristol do the micro granny, which is pretty cool, but sort of little dedicated granular sampler with a little recorder, little box. This could be the ticket for making one of them. I think,
Well, it's almost, it could be sort of iOS app made physical, couldn't it? I don't know. I know, Rich. I mean, I'm guessing, like many of us, there's very little time in the day to tinker with this kind of stuff. But I mean, as a sort of a starting block for maybe somebody else to do it and you to buy the end results, it's encouraging to see that sort of capability is possible at that sort of cost. I mean, that's incredibly cheap.
Absolutely. And I can't even begin to envision all the possible applications, but I liked, first of all of Gaz's commentary about it, and the notion that these could be used in fixed installation, purpose-driven entertainment venues, such as theme parks or places where you need a lot of redundant computing spread across a great distance in order to facilitate like those kinds. It just strikes me as a product that's rife with possibility, and many of which I'm sure I can't even see.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to patch the real time. This is where I could do with a Bela, that I could just recall a patch, just trying to patch those computer inputs back into the back into the.
Sorry, I didn't have more to say about it.
No, that's yeah. I need to have a sign, and I hold something up and just go, "Please, can you just flannel for a couple more minutes?" Yeah, keep talking for God's sake. Normally this isn't such an issue, but with a smaller panel, things are a lot tighter, isn't it? So I don't know what people think about this. I mean, the chat room, obviously, we got like I say, we got a pretty fulsome chat room. How they feel? Gosh, that's an enormous amount of people we got in there. Blimey,
188 folks.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Wow. What people think about this kind of notion, but for me, I'm constantly tinkering. I've got like a Raspberry Pi sat there that I've got these little projects that I'm kind of trying to make progress on, and it's nice to have something like that maybe you could kind of turn to for the occasional while ago. Oh, let's try this, let's try that. But the idea that once you've burnt the pure data patch or the custom code into it, that's what it is essentially. You just put it on an SD card, and we've talked about this before, and we've seen it before, haven't we? There are quite a lot of Eurorack modules that are potentially can be whatever you want them to be when you program. In fact, I got a delivery of a couple today. Let me see. Got the patch blocks.
Yeah, I was thinking patch blocks.
I got one of those. I got the patch blocks. Let's see. This is the patch blocks Eurorack, which is a similar concept where you have an editor environment, which is kind of, I guess it's a bit like pure data. I haven't had a chance to to check that out. Let me just open this up and see whether... Here, it's a real-time unboxing, folks. Really fascinating. So this is the patch blocks which we've seen, which are standalone. This is a Eurorack version. It gives you more I/O and more, and you program it via USB, and you get a couple of controllers and a bit of CV. And I don't know what that's going to be yet. Might be a synth, or it might be an LFO. I'm going to experiment with that. I'm going to do a review, but it's a similar concept. And it's just about how, I guess it's a bit like Reactor. We all sort of like the idea of this amazing kind of potential, but when it comes down to it, few of us have got much time or patience to sit there and create things for ourselves. We're more likely to load patches, and as we know, that's been used to develop quite a lot of the some of the native instruments kind of synthesizers and what have you. So I suppose that's the idea I like the idea of, but I suppose in actuality it's less likely to do. But the Kickstarter's still running. Just get over to Kickstarter. I say 30 days to go, so if you want to pick one up, I don't know what they've got left. They've got a bunch of stuff left, but I made the terrible mistake of saying that the last Kickstarter, the chord box, in fact, had run out. I'd just like to say now it hadn't. They did actually have several hundred left, but they were further down the rewards program. So I do apologise, and I did make good on that one. Okay, Rich, this was one that you brought up.
Hi everyone, this is Pete from Eventide, here to give you a quick overview along with some demos of the Octavox plugin, available for the first time in native format. The Octavox Harmonizer is a diatonic pitch shifter consisting of 8 independent voices, each with its own delay and feedback line. Octavox can take you from sounds starting like this to sounds like this. To give you a better understanding of Octavox and what it can do for your music, let's take a brief tour of the Octavox interface and listen to a few more demos. The notation grid gives you an alternate view and method of controlling Octavox individual parameters as they relate to musical notation. Pitch is controlled by moving the voices up and down the treble and bass staffs. And delay is controlled by moving the voices left and right on the measure.
I won't show the whole thing, but this strikes me as a kind of almost a coarser version, because a lot of the classic Eventide harmonizing algorithms are to do with kind of micro tuning and this sort of amazing stereo imaging and that sort of thing. And this is more of a sort of more flexible, but a broader kind of pitch based thing. Have you had a chance to check this out? I have a feeling you've got a bit of a soft spot for Eventide stuff, so hence you may have brought it to our attention. So I'm assuming you'll be able to tell us what you think.
Well, I haven't actually used it, but watching further into the demo, you see them do all these pitched sort of delay melodic things that are panning around. And you can, I believe, do that small pitch shift, short delay spreading kind of thing that we're accustomed to with the traditional harmonizer products that have been out for decades. But the fact that you can take each independent delay, decide how long it's going to be, decide where it's going to appear, decide what pitch it's going to appear at, and how much it's going to feed back and pan it to its own unique spot in the stereo field. That's all pretty cool stuff. And you've got 8 of them. So yeah, you could just map out a chord in real time like they did in the demo we watched, but there's a whole lot more rhythmically and melodically that you can do with this thing. And I was quite, it's not the greatest demo video in the world, but it seems like a really cool product.
Do you think that there's applications for section vocals, backing vocals, that kind of thing, the sort of thing that we've seen more traditionally handled by, the TC Helicon type stuff?
Could well be. I can't say that I've used it for that, but why not? And you can specify scales for the thing to operate under. You can, specify your distances from pitch to pitch. It's yeah, why not? I'd try that.
So, Gaz, I mean, you've got some. I remember when you first came on the show, you would occasionally punk us with your TC Helicon voice presets from time to time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so so this is. I mean, this. Well, the thing it made me think about the Eventide one anyway was this. I often show this, don't I? This the Digitech Time Bender, which is a little bit like that plugin, but it's only got 2 harmonies that it can generate. But it's got a similar functionality in a pedal, in that you can if you press on the pedal and play in a chord, it'll work out what the chord is, and then the notes will harmonize to to that. It's quite basic, major or a minor, so it hasn't got scales, very clever scales in it. But what I find is that if you put lots and lots of feedback on it and have very short delay times, but harmonized delay times, and have it with sort of like a tape echo, you get these kind of beautiful harmonized sort of smears, really. And I'm imagining with this Eventide being able to take that idea even further, and just to use it in that sort of way, rather than spreading the delays out, getting those sort of really sort of making like a mush, like a nice mush that can harmonize off the notes that you're playing. I think, and obviously the Eventide stuff always sounds brilliant, so I reckon that this does look cool. So just inform me now. So this is now standalone, but was part of the Eventide anthology bundle. Is that what's happening?
I think a bit of both. From what I can see, it's not a low cost plugin. It's the if you were to go for the Octavox full native version, I believe it's iLock. It's $199. But you can try a fully functioning 30-day demo if you just to make sure it's the thing that you might want. And I guess the anthology bundle is going to be a significantly better value than that, because I mean you can get a load of classic Eventide algorithms in that. I mean, we've mentioned some of them before, I think.
I just wondered though if this particular one will become available as an algorithm for the H9. What I've noticed with the H9, some of the newer algorithms, when it comes to the iOS app, because that's got Bluetooth, hasn't it? MIDI Bluetooth that controls. So you've got the iPad app that can control it, but some of the newer algorithms, they've got their own dedicated controllers on the app, so it's not, they're actually going away a little bit from all the algorithms. They've modeled it on the time factor, pitch factor pedals, but with the newer algorithms, they've got sort of just new control displays on them. So this would be fantastic, wouldn't it, if it was in a pedal and then you had the iPad to control the.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, just patches, I suppose, because that's the thing that tends to, this sort of technology, if you were, like you say, if you were to use it live, which is what the TC Helicon stuff kind of got right. They're the first people really to give that multi-harmony, intelligent pitch analysis, all of that kind of stuff and presets in a cost-effective factor that doesn't require a computer to operate.
I mean, Digitech were doing the Vocalist years ago, weren't they? Which was essentially this. I mean, not the TC one did sound better, I think, but I remember seeing that way back. Early 90s was the first.
I did an album's worth of vocals with that thing on David Lee Roth in 1993.
Wow!
Where I would take alternate lead vocal takes and perform background vocal parts that sang along with the lead quite often, based on them, so you could get the sound of different phrasings. It was cool. It was pretty neat. It was glitchy as hell. And the funny thing is, we spent all kinds of time and energy trying to eliminate any trace of glitching from this process. And 5 years later, glitching is all the rage, and everybody wants to hear that. And,
would it have been? Did it get to the point where there's that? What would it have been equally time consuming just to record the vocals to do that, or would that have been a very different kind of task?
You don't get the sound. You don't get that sound.
Right. Gotcha.
And I actually did a few gigs with him on which I was basically up there to do electronic background vocals.
Wow. Awesome. That's kind of like the I think her name Laura Clapp, I think was her name, that she did a lot of the stuff for the TC Helicon, and she was out with Howard Jones. She did like backing vocals essentially as a one singer, and she had a little keyboard controller and a TC Helicon voice live, and so she would sing the backing vocals and perform it, which I think I mentioned it at the time, it's probably several years ago now, and I just thought that there's got to be that's got to be a gig for somebody, somebody who can master that. You would imagine you'd get quite a lot of work, I suppose, unless there is the budget to take the gang on the road, which is obviously much more fun, I'd imagine.
That's what Angie was doing when we did the Carl Hyde tour, though.
Okay.
Carl was singing live. Angie was playing along with what he was doing and controlling the harmonies off the TC Helicon. So,
Right.
you know, and it was a tricky gig for her, because she was really having to sort of really concentrate intently on what Carl was doing, and just to really match his phrasing as much as possible. I mean, there was a lot of rehearsal involved. So there was there was like a kind of path, but he sometimes would veer from it a little bit. So she had to really follow it, while still doing other synth parts with her other hand,
with her nose.
She's an incredible musician. She is, and that was a really So that was that job
right,
there,
gotcha.
and and it's really cool. That is a very cool effect when it's working. But it does take quite a lot of skill to do it.
Well, there you go. Okay.
1994, I was doing this.
Nice.
Fair dues.
On stage.
This was nice as well. What do you think of this? This is a lovely sort of slightly eccentric.
To play the instrument that is utilizing our gentle earth, it's like you are becoming one with the instrument in a very true way. You just sit and go, yes.
This is kind of bonkers. This is a stalactite organ that's basically hit by little rubber mallets, and they've been sawn off to create the notes by the looks of things,
Luray
or selected.
Caverns in Luray, Virginia. When I press a key, it sends an electrical pulse up to a rubber-tipped mallet, which strikes the stalactite, causing it to vibrate and producing a incredibly beautiful musical tone. The area that the strikers cover is roughly 3.5 acres.
Wow.
Which then makes it literally the world.
That's mental. I mean, it's really interesting. We haven't done one of these kind of complete nutters and their unfeasible instruments for a long time. But actually, this isn't the guy that did it. This is the Luray Caverns, which are in Virginia. I don't know. Have you ever been to those, Rich? It sounds like the sort of thing that, in the same way that around here you go to see Cheddar or Wookey Hole, you go to see the Luray Caverns. It's one of those boyhood things that one does.
I have been there, and I've actually been there since my boyhood. I've been there more than once. Western Virginia is gorgeous to begin with, and there are these wonderful caverns, of which this is the best known one. And I had heard about the organ, but had never actually heard it performed. It's only performed at certain times, and you can't exactly run up to it and play it. And typically when you take a tour of Luray Caverns, you're with a group of about 15 to 20 people. So what I would normally do if I wasn't with 15 to 20 people, which is excite these spaces with voice and clapping and whatever else I could find to make these spaces speak to me so I could hear them. I can't do that in a group of 15 or 20 people because everybody would think I was nuts. However, the last time I was in Western Pennsylvania, in addition to going to Luray Caverns, we went to another one right in the area called Endless Caverns. And on this particular occasion, it was my wife, myself, and this 15-year-old girl who was our tour guide, period. That was it. And so while I was down there, I warned the young lady that I might make some loud noises into some spaces and that she shouldn't be alarmed and stuff like that. And then I proceeded to shout, clap, sing, do everything I possibly could to excite these amazing spaces I was in to hear what they sounded like. It was a wonderful day for me. Everybody, I mean, I'm sure both my wife and the tour guide thought I was absolutely nuts, but I was having a blast.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that sort of thing when you get that spot. I mean, I'm guessing those sort of, one might think, it'd be a lovely place to play music and stuff, but I guess you got that full range reverb. And for something like the organ, I did have some information about it, which is, it was actually, it's called a lithophone. And it's got a custom console. It was actually designed and implemented in 1956, over 3 years, by a chap called, this is a great name, Leyland W. Sprinkle, which is a name that does ring a bell. I've got this awful feeling that we might have covered this at the very early Sonic Talk, but I'll assume we haven't. And it's near Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, USA. And it looks, I guess the thing is, it sounds like it's probably quite close. You couldn't hit those things very hard because you wouldn't want them to come down, would you? Because that would be... Right. But that you can see they've been sort of hacked off and tuned. I wonder what the tuning process must be, because I mean, imagine sawing a bit off a stalactite while you're up a wobbly ladder and not getting it right first time would be a very tedious process. I don't know.
It's kind of like tuning a Wurlitzer electric piano.
Yeah, perhaps not quite so dangerous, but unless you've got the power on, of course. But
Well,
What I couldn't work out though, was there like an organ playing all those pitched notes coming from the stalactites, or was it like just?
no, I
was
believe
it
so.
like- right,
All the
so they've
sounds
gone around
you're
and
hearing.
tuned. And you think that they've like actually tuned the stalactites and stalagmites specifically? That's what they've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they did that in the 50s as well.
Yeah, 1956.
So it's over
Mr.
such
Sprinkle,
a big period,
in fact, did it.
because they were looking for ones that were the closest pitches, I guess. But they had to go over 3.5 acres to find.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's a labour of obsession. I would say love, but it's a little bit weirder than that.
When can I go? When is it open? Can I go and listen to it? That sounds amazing.
Probably open all year round. It's
Yeah.
maybe not in the dead of winter. You'd have to check that. I'm sure it's easily found online, but that's a very popular and well-known cavern in that area of the United States.
I'd imagine if it's that busy.
But
I mean,
like
because it sounds quiet. I can't imagine. Yeah, it's easy to hear.
Which is why I was so thrilled with that opportunity in the other cavern to just have it be me, my wife, and this tour guide, because then I could actually behave badly and nobody would care. Behave badly in terms of, common group, like you don't want to alarm 25 people by shouting into that hole in the wall right there, but
you could. Have you ever done that thing? We used to do it on the tour bus where you do a 1, 2, 3 and everybody picks a note and you just sing and you create these chords. If you could organise them all, you're going to make sure that they're a choir. You just go 1, 2, 3 and everybody hits a note and you do it a few times. Imagine the space reacting to that. I bet you get some lovely stuff. Must be. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can imagine the guys from what's the name of the impulse response guy? The Dutch company, which I can't remember off the top of my head, would have been
Altiverb.
Altiverb, yeah, some impulse responses from there. Apart from the dripping, could be a bit intrusive.
But I'd love to record stuff down there. It sounds amazing in these spaces. The sound is like surreal in a very literal way.
Absolutely. No, I could imagine. Well, I guess it taps into that thing. I mean, in the same way that all my ambient synth noodling tends to go into at least 9 seconds of reverb. It's my dream gig in many ways. Just take a speaker down there and play a few synth notes. Be lovely.
It's a day I'll never forget, because I knew as I was doing it, I would never get this opportunity ever again. No how. It's just, how do you get that chance?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Right. Anyway, this is the last video, the last piece we're going to do, and I thought that you might enjoy this, Gaz.
Aha.
This is AUM, I guess, or AUM, AUM, from Kimatic, which is a pretty advanced iOS source and destination and affecting mixer. Kind of audio bussy in concept. But looks very easy to root. I know, because I came over to see you guys last night, and you had this running on the iPad Pro, and it did look great. Is there enough grunt in these devices to be able to utilise this sort of technology very well? I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, the iPad Pro it seems to handle everything that I've been chucking at it. I haven't had it very long, so I haven't really tested it extensively, but this app certainly looks like you would never have considered this a few years ago on an older generation of an iPad. So it's definitely a sign of where we're at with those things. And much has been made of the iPad Pro being, like much more. There's 4 gig of internal RAM, and the processor is apparently, I don't know, it's got a similar Geekbench score to what a MacBook Air or something. So, it's certainly capable of running a bunch of things simultaneously. So just to explain a little bit about this thing, then it's almost like having a mixer, that you can put anything into the input channel. So either if you've got an audio interface going into it, like in my case, I'm using the Behringer X Air, so I've got 18 physical inputs then, so I can route any of those inputs into any apps really, and also built into it are it's like EQ and dynamics processing as well. So it's like having a like fat channel or something for everything. But those inputs then, they could also come from apps that you're running inside of the iPad. So the idea is that you can have that one place where you're controlling all the levels, and with effect sends and various bits and bobs. So that's got a lot of uses. I mean, at the moment, I'm trying to build this setup that, as you saw yesterday, Nick, where I've got the iPad Pro. It's like a standing up. It's behind me, actually. Let's work out if I can. Whoops.
Oh, don't worry. I'll take your word for it. It's over there.
Yeah. And there's lots of instruments around it. So having that in the center, having that as the touch mixer that you can then feed it through all those interesting apps is quite an interesting thing. So I'm only just exploring the potential of this, and literally only got that app yesterday. So, but certainly interesting. And of course, iOS now supports audio units. Its version of audio units, and that when that becomes more of a standard, I think a product like this is going to make a lot more sense, because you can just insert things. Well, you can insert inter-app audio, an audio bus into it, so it's very compatible with all the existing iOS standards, which is cool. And it's also this idea that when you start, it's blank. You add a channel. The channel appears, add another channel, so you can essentially build and save those as presets. So yeah, I think it's a very special app. And Kymatica, they've got a good track record now. They've a few years back they brought out an app called Audio Share, which has been one of my probably most used apps in a way. It's essentially just like a librarian, but it's also got a simple but nicely implemented editor, and it's a cool little app. But it's by the same guy who made that, and he's also made various plugins, and he did that Sector as well, which was a really interesting.
Seems like a fairly smart guy. I mean, this kind of links into one of the earlier topics where we were looking at the Mersenne, which is next to nothing, whereas this is priced at $19, $19.99, and I think it might be on sale at half price. So it's a kind of high ticket item, which I think, when you consider probably the amount of work that goes into it, seems like a fairer kind of approach to this sort of thing. I suppose the thing that's quite interesting about this whole area is, we're starting to blur the issue between, whose DSP are you using for this and that, because they all become kind of, it's just processor time and interface in many ways. I know, Rich, are you... I don't suppose you're kind of about to ditch a real world mixer for something like this that would be running in software only, but it's got potential.
I haven't mixed anything on a hardware board in decades. Why wouldn't I be willing to ditch? I mean, I could. I'm not that. I did watch the intro video to this thing, but I didn't really feel like I learned a whole lot about what it is and what it does. But it looked like very interesting technology to me, just in general. But I can't speak authoritatively anywhere near like Gaz can on this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely got. I think the thing that I'm starting to see as we, this is why these iOS apps are in this particular episode. It sort of feels like there's this. That it's starting to come together a little bit because we've had these mixers that are just boxes with iPad or Android or software interfaces, and then you've got combinations of the two. You've got this, and it's starting to kind of merge a lot more and become indistinguishable. And it's down to almost interface design and the use of algorithms in many ways.
Yeah, and my experiences I've been having in the last couple of weeks, taking the Behringer box and an iPad to a rehearsal. We're writing the soundtrack for a film, so that situation where I've got a music stand, I've got my bass on, I've got my iPad on a music stand, and I've got like that Behringer box on the floor. I've said to the other musicians, you have got to give me cables. You've got to be responsible for getting into the box. So when we set up for rehearsal, people come up and go, yeah, and they all plug in. They know what numbers to plug into. in the box. So I'm not having to do all the work. I'm not having to do all the engineering because I want to be a musician. So everybody comes and helps out, all plug into the box. And then on the music stand, I'm actually running Cubasis to do it. This will tie into the point you make, but I arm the tracks really, really simple. And then we're doing writing, come up with an idea, go over it a couple of times, hit record it, multi-track, play it back, adjust the mix as we're listening to it out through a big pair of speakers. Go, okay, let's go again this time. And this time let's try moving that organ part to the offbeat or whatever it is. Do it again, do, listen back to it, little kind of, and it's such this fluid writing process. And honestly, the sound quality really blew me away. I brought back the recordings and I just thought, wow, going from that idea to what sounds like really high quality studio recordings, but just instantly in the rehearsal is phenomenal. And
without having to take the whole kit and caboodle along. I mean,
it's a real simple kit. I guess that's what I was meaning. It feels that has come of age now after it promising this. It really feels like it's kind of come of age, and there's a lot. There's more ways to move the data around now as well than. There's still this annoying data funnel that you have to go through iTunes, or that's certainly, they still have this kind of stranglehold on the data. But now, for instance, Cubasis on the iPad, you can save it to external drives if you've got these kind of wireless drives that the iPad can communicate with. So that's pretty cool. So, that side of things. So, well, I mean, in my situation then, in the rehearsal room, we got Wi-Fi in the rehearsal room. We do these tunes. I press mix down and then I save it to Dropbox. Then everybody's got that instantly as well. Everyone in the band, it goes to all of this kind of shared Dropbox. And so just in terms of this converging of various modern things, it feels really great to work that way. And as I say, going through this writing process and listening back to things at that quality is the thing that's quite staggering to me. Rehearsal room writing, typically you come away with a terrible, bad quality recording just as a memo. But to be able to come away with these multi-track recordings and the setup time being next to nothing is.
I suppose the thing is if you're using the mixer to amplify in the room as well, then essentially you're halfway there by the time you hit record and you're just good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got I've saved a like a preset now with all the settings. Yeah, I just load it, bang, everyone plugs into the same sockets. We've only done it over 2 weeks now, but it's just previously I'd have been running around doing all sorts of stuff. Even just the idea of I'm stood up and I can have an iPad on a music stand. I'm not even having to bend over to operate it. Just reach and just touch it like that. That is amazing. It just that sounds like a really simple, obvious thing, but just in terms of being conducive to being in that musical space, and that the iPad not having that weird depth of file management, the computer world. You've kind of got this
simplicity, right? And I like the idea that you could then just kind of go mix that down. Everybody in the band goes away and they can get it, and they've got it straight away. That's an interesting notion. That definitely kind of shortens the tether, because up to then you would have been in the studio having to kind of like prepare. I've just got to do those mixes. I've just got to upload them and blah 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 blah. Yeah, I think that I can see the merit in that.
Yeah, it makes the whole thing a much more pleasurable and speedy. I don't usually. I always feel it's me who has to do all the work, and now I'm still doing the work, but it's lightened the load hugely, really. So, yeah. So, I mean, this is still my experimental period of life without a laptop, really, and seeing if I can manage with an iPad instead. So, as I say, the data thing is still a bugbear of mine, but it's definitely going in the right way. So coming back to this, to AUM, how would you say it? AUM.
Yeah, I guess so.
Will it stick around long enough to become a standard? That's maybe the problem with these things. It's that to really get the most out of that would involve using it regularly and to really try to integrate it to build a workflow around it. But I think judging by how good AudioShare has been and well supported as well, I think that this is going to be very well supported too. And incidentally as well, this mixer, there is a record button, and if you press record, it will record whatever you're doing straight into AudioShare. So, so it's AudioShare is good because it's been adopted by quite a lot of other apps and pieces of software. So it's a good way of getting the access to that audio embedded into.
Right, gotcha.
And then finally, the thing about it also has Ableton Link support. So it can act as a master timer. So whatever apps that you essentially insert into it, you can synchronize it to your Ableton project. And of course, Ableton Link isn't just to work from iPad to Ableton. Ableton Link will work from just a single iPad to another iPad. So again, interesting.
Right. Well, I think that's probably about time we're going to close the show down. We've been on air for quite some time now. I want to say thank you very much to everybody. And Gaz, I mean, just quickly, we have talked about doing maybe a Sonic Tuck special on this whole thing, and that's something I really look forward to doing. But I could see it's getting a bit late, and I need to get on. But I do thank you for your input.
Sorry, I'm waffling on a bit long.
No, it is an interesting topic. It's about workflow, which is a lot about what we're talking about, really. So we'll say thank you very much to everybody for joining us. Thank you for the chat room. It's been a very, very fulsome chat room this week. Thank you also. And don't forget, if you want to enter the Isotope competition, what you need to do is tweet the hashtag Essential Audio Tools and the hashtag Ozone7 to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. for your chance to win a copy of Ozone 7, the essential audio mastering tools, you could say. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining us this week. I'm glad you're back on terra firma and back for a little while now. I guess is this a quiet time of year for gigging, or is it just crazy as ever?
Well, it's in past years we've been quite busy. One year, 3 years ago, I was in Germany at this point. This year, this next few weeks will be mostly at home, and we will begin our touring opening for Duran Duran in April in the US.
Oh, right. Okay. That's going to be fun. How many dates?
Geez, probably between 30 and 35 across April and July.
Wow. Okay. That's going to be fun.
A lot of them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
Well, Rich, thank you very much for joining us, though. It's always a pleasure to have your input, and thank you indeed. I hope you have a fruitful rest of your week and what have you. And also, Gaz Williams over there in his mobile studios kind of thing. Thank you very much for joining us too, Gaz. Look forward to seeing you in person over here for some reviews and, of course, for the gig as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, great.
Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks to everybody in the chat room, and we shall see you next time.